we'll leave you alone now, and in a few minutes you'll see everyone you're actually here to see. Thank you.
Check. Okay, apologize for being a little bit late, but we're going to get this show on the road. And before we start, I'd like to ask Tully Paul, the Eagle Starman, I guess, and he's an elder from Metapanagia, and he's going to give us a short blessing, and really appreciate him being here, as we are on the traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq people. So I thought it'd be a good idea to have him say. So, Mr. Paul.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and first of all, I want to give thanks to our Creator and Mother Earth for providing us life and all the friendship. One thing, what we do as First Nations people, we greet and welcome our friends from afar, and want to welcome the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. So let's give him a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I also want to give big thanks to our Regional Chief, Roger Augustine from Nadawahanik First Nation. Thank you, Chief. I also want to give thanks to Mayor Adam Lorden and all his council in Miramichi. Big round of applause for him also. And now I want to give thanks to these beautiful, beautiful young ladies here. She's holding the eagle wing, which is holding the space. So that way, everybody, please stand at this time, and we're going to sing this honor song to honor you, to welcome your spirit. And if you have any illness or you have someone that's sick in a hospital, home, or wherever they may be, it's a good time to remember them, with your thoughts and your prayers. So at this time, I'm going to sing this song. Maybe you can hold the mic.
May
Okay, thank you very much, spiritual leader. It was very, I guess, inspiring and good way to start our session. Alors, bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening. My name is Pat Finnegan. I'm proud, and I proudly represent the riding of Miramichi Grand Lake. It's so great to see so many of you here tonight, even though we had pretty bad driving conditions. I'm glad to see that you all made it here safe and hoping that you make it safe back to your home. Ça me fait un grand plaisir de voir autant de monde ici ce soir pour avoir une importante conversation avec le Premier ministre du Canada. Just hang on a second here. I would also like to acknowledge that we have here on, before I introduce our special guest tonight, I would like to introduce and thank other colleague members of Parliament for joining me this evening. So I really appreciate Elena Lockhart traveling all the way from Quispamsis last night. I don't know where you left us today, probably Sussex, but for being here tonight. Elena is our Fundy Royal Member of Parliament, and she's also Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism and Official Language, and also La Francophonie. So thank you so much for being here, Elena. Avec nous ce soir, on a aussi le député de Acadie Bathurst, Serge Cormier, qui est le secrétaire parlementaire de la Défense nationale. Alors, merci Serge d'être ici avec nous ce soir. And also, quite a ways away, we have all the way from Fredericton, our member of Parliament, Matt DeCourcy. Matt is also the Parliament's Secretary for Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And also along with our federal colleagues, we have several other provincial and municipal leaders here, and along with First Nation chiefs and communities. So I really appreciate all of you being here tonight. I'm very excited to have the Prime Minister here in Miramichi tonight. Prime Minister Trudeau is certainly no stranger to our riding. C'est sa troisième visite ici dans notre région depuis que nous sommes au gouvernement. Et je lui suis très reconnaissant pour tous les investissements qu'on a reçus. And I don't want to go on a political speech, but just like to highlight just a few little things. One of the things that I'm really proud of, especially proud of, is the Canada Child Benefit. That is really a game changer for families. Right here in our riding, it puts an average of $7,100 to every family, and that is non-taxable money that they can use to put their kids into hockey, dance, or even put good food on the table. So this is really, I've seen so many families that it has really helped them, and it's money that goes back into the economy. It's money that's helps turn the wheel. So I'm really happy about that one. And of course, also, I mean, if you've seen the last few years, lots of infrastructure money. We've put a lot of money into bridges. We're going to redo the bridge. It's going to be a kind of a long summer next in 2020 that we have to close the Centennial Bridge down. But that's a lot of investment that we put in there. Also, so many other infrastructure projects. As the mayor will say, we have the wharf that we're working on. We have things that are not maybe as sexy like sewers and water. But I mean, if you can't flush the toilet, it's important. So all those things that our government spends on, I mean, some people will say, well, you're spending a lot of money. Yes, but the time to patch the roof is when it's sunny. And there'll be downturn in the economy eventually, and we have to be ready. We have to have the infrastructure in place so that we can certainly, our business and everybody can get back and forth to work. So those are all important investment that we've put in there. And also, to my friend Serge, and I see Fernand Thibodeau here, les taux d'assurance, le taux de chômage est le plus bas depuis 40 ans. Lowest unemployment in the last 40 years. And that's really, you see people working everywhere, but there's still people that need EI, and we've expanded the program, we've made it more fair, because there's still people that have a hard time to work 12 months out of the year. So I think that's another achievement. So anyways, I'm not going to go further. My boss is here, and I know he's going to talk about all those things. And so but to have a conversation with the Prime Minister in an open, public forum where random unscripted questions from the floor are asked, it's a privilege that we as Canadians should never take for granted. I mean, this is a chance to have a conversation, ask the good and the tough questions, and have a reply from the Prime Minister himself. So I'm really happy that he has chosen to come here to Miramichi and have my colleagues here with us today. He's been doing town halls across the country, started on the West Coast, and finally he's on our coast here in Miramichi. Alors, I hope that he is ready. Sans plus tarder, without further ado, please help me give a great Miramichi welcome to un grand coup de main à notre Premier ministre, Justin Trudeau.
Merci Pat pour cette introduction. Merci pour ton travail. Merci à vous tous d'être ici ce soir. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. This is one of my very, very favorite things. Please sit down, sit down, sit down. Get comfortable, get cozy. It's a nice space for it tonight. This gives us an opportunity to have the kind of conversation, quite frankly, we should be having a lot more often in our country. Conversations about where we're going as a country, how we're building a better future, how we're working together. Conversations in which we hear from a broad range of people with concerns, perhaps very different opinions and perspectives. And this is something that, quite frankly, needs to be at the heart of our democracy, particularly when we talk about a country as diverse as Canada, where all our different perspectives are really important to be heard and listened to. That's why I want to thank the Elder for your prayer, for your blessing off the top. Thank you so much for your welcome onto traditional Mi'kmaq territory. Thank you, Pat, for your introduction. Thank you to our friends MPs who are here, and thank you all for coming out tonight. This, for me, is not just an opportunity for me to get out, but it's also an opportunity for the focus in Ottawa to be spread out a little across the country. Funny story, a great example of how we need to make sure we're connecting folks in Ottawa to the rest of the country. We have a graphic designer that, for my tour out through New Brunswick today, actually invented an entirely new city. Saint, S-A-I-N-T, John's apostrophe S. So the opportunity to make sure that people across the country know the fullness of the country is one of those great things about these town halls. Mais l'autre chose aussi, c'est que c'est une opportunité de s'entendre les uns les autres. Vous allez entendre des questions de différentes personnes qui ont différentes perspectives. On ne sera peut-être pas toujours d'accord avec les propos ou les questions ou les préoccupations des gens, mais c'est extrêmement important de pouvoir écouter, comprendre et apprendre. C'est pour ça, d'ailleurs, que, surtout ici au Nouveau-Brunswick, une province officiellement bilingue, je vais prendre les questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Je vais parler et français et anglais, mais on a de la traduction, l'interprétation simultanée pour les gens qui voudraient bien pouvoir suivre dans les deux langues si vous ne maîtrisez pas les deux langues. This is an opportunity for us to really hear from each other. And the only thing I'm going to ask, because as you all know, there was no screening process to come out tonight. You didn't have to, talk about your political. You had to be brave enough to come out in the weather. And I thank you all for your commitment to democracy on what is a cold and slippery night. This is really something. But it's also really important to me that all Canadians have an opportunity to engage with the Prime Minister, with their political leadership, and ask questions and share the concerns that they might have. So all I'm going to ask really is that you be respectful of each other. If someone has a microphone and is asking a question, whether you agree with them or not, please let them get through their question. And likewise, if you're not picked for a question, I'm just going to pick a whole bunch of people randomly, please respect the person who is picked and their opportunity to ask the question. Because this is about us listening and learning from each other, and that's what I'm really excited about. Alors, sans plus tarder, on va s'y lancer. Je vais commencer avec des questions ici, puis je vais juste faire le tour de la salle. Vous levez la main pour prendre des questions. Je vais commencer ici, s'il y a quelqu'un qui a une question pour moi. Oui, monsieur. Go ahead, sir. Just get over to you with the mic.
Thank you and welcome to Miramichi.
It's great to be back.
Yesterday I heard on CBC that a Chinese technology company is investing millions of dollars in Canadian universities in 5G research. And my question would be, what does the government plan to do to further the security of our information infrastructure?
That's a really, really great question. It's something that a lot of folks are preoccupied with. We know that increasingly our reliance on data and technology is having a direct impact on our security, on our economic security, and even our well-being as communities in a country. And we know from various stories around the world, cyber attacks from different countries are rising, threats to our democracies, to the election process are there. We just put in place some new laws around protecting the upcoming election from cyber interference. But we have in our pockets on us devices and technology from different companies around the world. And I think one of the things that is exciting is there are so many different countries innovating, so many different companies developing new technologies that are going to make our lives easier, make things more affordable, change the way we work, change the way we succeed as communities. But we also know it brings in potential vulnerabilities. And that's why Canada works very, very carefully with all of our allies to ensure that we are protecting our own communications and security infrastructure. Canada has the Communication Security Establishment, CSE, which is a advanced national security institution that it really focuses on secure communications and keeping Canadians safe from hacking, from cybersecurity, protecting our governments. And they are looking very, very carefully at a broad range of technologies from around the world to see if there are vulnerabilities that could be brought into the Canadian system. Now, there's a number of countries that have actually banned Huawei, which is a Chinese technology company. We are looking at what they're doing. We're looking at vulnerabilities in Canada, and our national security experts are going to analyze and make recommendations to us as to what we need to do. We don't make decisions like that based on politics. We make decisions like that based on evidence and based on where our vulnerabilities are. But we will be listening to the advice of our security experts on how to make sure that our security, that our communications infrastructure is well secured, because different countries play in different ways in terms of how they use various technologies they export around the world to gather information and exploit vulnerabilities. But thank you for your question, sir. Yes.
Thank you for coming to the Miramichi on this terrible evening. We appreciate you coming.
It's a lovely warm evening in here. So.
Maybe you brought global warming with you, I don't know. This is a very Christian community. When I checked last with Stats Canada, it was 99% Christian. And so my question to you is about Christianity. I operate a Christian radio station. And last year, when we filled out our summer student application, there was an attestation there that some of us Christians couldn't check off. And because of that, we're not eligible for summer student. And so my question to you is, what are your views on Christian liberty? And I noticed that it's missing this year, and I wonder why it was there last year and why it changed. And I'd like to know a little bit of your particular faith views, and I'd like to know a little bit about our Christian, when we differ with you, which sometimes we do, what is our liberty in being able to express that? And when you're done that, I have one more question, if that's possible.
Well, sure, loop it in as well. Go ahead.
Well, this one's quite a lot bigger, and I have to tell you a little story.
The first one was pretty big too, so.
I am a preacher. A year or so ago, I was invited to the European Parliament to receive a candle that had been lit in the grotto where Jesus was born. It was called the Candle of Peace. And when I was there, I met the Minister of Small Business, I met the Vice President of the European Parliament, and I brought the candle to Canada, and I presented it to Pat Finnegan, and I'm wondering if it is possible to present it to you for this reason. There's a little background to it all. Some of the parliamentarians there are heavily involved in small business, like Paul Rubik. I don't know if you know that name or not. He's a Minister of Small Business for the European Parliament. He presented me the candle, and I thought if we could present it here in Canada, then we could invite them over and talk business to them, seeing as how the Americans are not quite as open to business as they had been. So there's two.
Excellent question. Three questions. One about the summer jobs program and the attestation from last year. Second, about my own faith and how I see that as part of my own leadership. And the third question about small business and trade with Europe and a candle that I would love to be honored to receive. So first of all, the summer jobs program. Every year, Canada provides money, the federal government provides money to organizations across the country to hire summer students, to hire young people. We help subsidize their jobs, and they work in their communities on a broad range of projects, a broad range of things. And it's something that is not, it's such a great program that we actually doubled the amount of young people who can now go through this summer jobs program. So this is something that is really good, and it allows young people to get jobs in their communities. It allows community organizations to have more warm bodies in the summer to actually deliver the programs and the services that matter. And it's just a great news story. One of the challenges was there are a few organizations over the past years that we realized were receiving government funds and hiring students to do advocacy work for anti-abortion organizations. And that was actually sending out flyers to homes across the country that were very graphic and, quite frankly, had as a goal to try and restrict legally women's rights to protect to make decisions around their own reproductive health and choices. And what we felt as a government was that obviously people can have all sorts of beliefs and advocate for all sorts of different things, but we didn't feel that it was right for the taxpayer monies to be going to organizations that were specifically working to limit rights for women or LGBT communities that were explicitly protected in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So we have no problem with organizations that are advocating for that, except that I disagree with them, but we don't think that they should be getting public money to do that. So we moved forward with an attestation last year in applications for the summer jobs that said that you are not going to be using these funds to fund projects that are limiting or going in the face of fundamental rights recognized by Canadians. However, as you pointed out, sir, the way the attestation was understood, the way it was rolled out, the way it was taken by many groups, was that if you didn't fully defend a woman's right to choose, you couldn't qualify for government money, which absolutely wasn't our intention and wasn't the case. We know every summer there are extraordinary community groups, church groups, religious organizations that run summer camps for kids, that run various environmental activities, that run community activities that have nothing to do with limiting reproductive choices or banning LGBT kids or something like that. So we reworded the proposal to make sure that we were just banning activities that were specifically going to limit women's rights. If you were doing that, if you wanted to send out flyers, you couldn't do that. But if you're just running a faith-based community group or summer camp, that would be no problem. We're not policing views or perspectives. It was really saying, look, if you're trying to go against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, maybe you shouldn't get money from the government on that. So it was a situation where what we had done wasn't as clear as it should have been. We listened to people. We worked with an extraordinary range of faith groups over the fall to make sure that the new program, as it would be open to all and would be delivering on the kinds of great experiences for young people that we needed. And that's why the Summer Jobs Program is back and in full swing. And I look forward to making sure that you have the full opportunity to apply to young people in your community for various projects. So thank you. Second question, on my own faith. I am Catholic. I was raised very Catholic. We'd go to church with my father every Sunday. We read the Bible every Sunday night as a family. I said my prayers every night before going to sleep as a family with my father. He was raised in very Catholic Quebec at a time of extreme influence of the church, and that was just the way I was. And my Catholicism, my faith, continues to be a deep part of who I am and how I see the world and how I see my responsibility to serve, my opportunity to engage. But at the same time, I do look at my father as a bit of an example for me, because I knew how deep his faith was. I had a great example of it at one point when he pulled me aside when I was about 15 or 16, and we were living in Montreal, and my mom had remarried and was living in Ottawa, and it was, my dad and myself and my two brothers living in Montreal in a big house, and he sort of pulled me aside at one point. It was probably 15 or 16, and he said, I just want you to know that I'm sorry that I'm not going to be able to provide you a mother figure in this home in Montreal for us, because my faith tells me that what God joined together, no man can render asunder, and therefore I could never get remarried. So I just want you to know that I'm sorry about that, but that's the way my faith is. And I sort of said, don't worry about that, Dad. I've got a mom, she's great, and we have a good life here in Montreal, and that's fine. But as I sort of reflected on that in later years, I realized my father was the Prime Minister who brought in the laws regulating and making divorce accessible for everyone in 1969. He was the one who changed with the bill omnibus that also decriminalized homosexuality. He also, changed our divorce laws so that you didn't have to prove, or you didn't have to have evidence. You could just, for men or women, get a divorce. And it was a big transformation of our legal system. And here was someone whose faith was so deep that he didn't believe in it personally, who was the person who stepped up to make sure that everyone's rights were protected, and that this was an option to people who needed it or wanted it. And that's where I understood the responsibility that we have as politicians to represent everyone and to defend everyone's rights. That my faith is very important to me and always will be, but it cannot dictate to me how I limit other people's rights. So a woman's choice around her reproductive options is her choice. Now, she can take advice from her doctor or her priest or her husband or her friends, or advice from nobody and make her decision, but it is her decision, and it is not up to legislators to limit those choices and those rights. Similarly with LGBTQ2 issues, similarly with a range of issues like that. So for me, my faith shapes on how I live well, how I have my values, how I try and reflect on the right path of service. But it doesn't prevent me from recognizing and standing up to defend everyone's rights, regardless of their beliefs. Thank you for that question. And the last question about small businesses and the European Union. I am happy to highlight that this week is actually Small Business Week. So we are highlighting one of the things we did, which is as of January 1st, we have right now the lowest small business tax rates in the G7, one of the lowest in the OECD. We've lowered small business taxes to 9%. That they've been going down over the past 3 years, but now they are at the lowest level, and that really helps small businesses right across the country. We know that our Minister of Small Business is not just Minister of Small Businesses now, she's also the Minister of Small Businesses and Export Diversification, Export Promotion, sorry. Export Promotion, because we know that increasingly, even if it's a small business, you can engage with a global market. And your capacity to do that is something that we definitely want to encourage. Indeed, we, as you just highlighted, signed a free trade deal with Europe actually a couple of years ago that's been in place for a year now, and it is seeing significant benefits for the Canadian economy and European economy. As you say, as the US goes a little more protectionistic, we've signed a trade deal with Europe. We reasserted and saved our trade deal with the United States and Mexico, and we actually signed a trade deal with a number of large Asian economies, including Japan, which means we are now the only G7 country with a free trade deal with every other G7 country, and we have preferential access to 2/3 of the global economy. Canadians understand how important trade is, small businesses understand how important trade is, and that's something we're going to continue to support and defend. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to shorten my answers a bit too, so we can try and get to as many questions as possible. So, coming around. Yes, sir.
Monsieur mon Premier ministre, merci. Je vous accueille. Moi, je suis de Marseille, originaire. J'ai été accueilli par le Canada grandement en 1984. Alors, merci aux gens présents. R-A-D-O-N. It's the same word in French and in English. And radon kills 3,000 Canadians each year. Each year we need 3,000 Canadians for radon cause. We know we have one Canadian in mind right now with the news in China, but news reports small areas full of radon here and there in the country, like in Canada, like in Guelph, where more people are likely to test their home or their work. The biggest radon survey made by Health Canada in 2012 reflect that you are here now tonight in the highest, in the peak level of radon in the country from coast to coast to coast. Not only that, but looking at the figure, I saw that 1/3 of the highest radon level measured in homes where people live in Canada, 14,000 homes, 1/3 of the most dangerous homes are in New Brunswick. I have a wonderful pamphlet that is done by Health Canada, and my question to you is, where are the walls for for Health Canada's pamphlet? The people in northern New Brunswick, the regional office is in Halifax. That's quite a stretch. Show the pamphlet to the communities, to the city halls. They say, we don't want to engage in that because there is some money involved in there, and we don't have the money. We have enough on our load. It's not our load. Talk to the government of provincial government. Public health is in charge of prevention of health, and they deal with food, which is killing less people than my radon. So my question to you is, what is your plan to address radon problem in northern half of New Brunswick?
Thank you for your question. I have to highlight that I wasn't aware that Health Canada actually had a program, as you've highlighted right now, for awareness on the dangers of radon. So I thank you for highlighting that. I don't know specifically what the plan is for northern New Brunswick, but we have an MP, Serge Cormier, who's done a lot of great work up on the Péninsule Acadienne on some very difficult issues, including helping solve the trou noir problem, and I know he'll be very interested in engaging with you about how we can raise the level of public awareness on this issue. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. I've taken 3 men in a row now, so I can get some women to put up their hands. Here we go. There we go.
Merci.
I'm going to come all the way around. I'm just going to work my way around right there.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre, et
Plaisir.
bienvenue chez nous. Ma question est, les 2 semaines passées, vous avez annoncé un nouveau ministère avec Bernadette Jordan, je pense, qui va être un développement économique rural. Ma question est, est-ce que vous pourriez élaborer un petit peu sur le rôle de ce nouveau ministère-là? Suffit que le Nouveau-Brunswick est complètement rural.
Tout à fait. Bien, écoutez, d'abord, on est déjà très, très bien servi par 2 ministres au Nouveau-Brunswick, Dominique Leblanc et Ginette Petitpas-Taylor, qui font un travail exceptionnel. Donc, il fallait quand même qu'on s'assure que nos amis à Nouvelle-Écosse et une ministre. Mais effectivement, le développement économique rural est important à travers le pays. On sait qu'à bien des niveaux, les villes sont un endroit où il y a beaucoup de développement et de croissance économique, mais on sait qu'il y a aussi d'énormes défis à travers le Canada rural qui a besoin d'investissement. Et nos grands emphases vont être sur la création d'emplois dans les régions, que ce soit par nos développements des ressources de façon responsable. Nos investissements en infrastructure, c'est la deuxième chose. On va vraiment s'assurer qu'on est en train de livrer sur les infrastructures nécessaires, que ce soit des autoroutes, des ports, des aéroports, des investissements qui vont faire une différence. Peut-être juste du logement, plus de logement parce qu'il y a des besoins dans le pays, les endroits ruraux du pays aussi. Et la troisième priorité, ça va être par rapport à l'accès à l'information à l'Internet. On sait que d'avoir accès par téléphone cellulaire ou au Wi-Fi est de plus en plus important pour tout le monde au Canada. On ne devrait pas voir ça juste comme un enjeu pour les villes. C'est partout, les gens ont besoin de pouvoir se connecter au reste du monde et on est en train d'investir là-dedans. Et notre nouvelle ministre va nous aider énormément à répondre directement à ces défis-là. Merci. Une autre question. You, young man.
How old were you when you became Prime Minister?
What is your name?
Liam.
Liam. Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you for being part of this. I became Prime Minister when I was 44. I became when I was 44, and I had my 45th birthday right after becoming Prime Minister. I think. Yes. Well, thank you very much for that question, Liam.
Okay.
Yes. Pass him the mic, please.
Alors, bonsoir et merci d'être ici au Nouveau-Brunswick. Ça fait plaisir. Puis moi, je te lance l'invitation de venir aussi dans la péninsule acadienne. Ça serait vraiment le fun que tu viennes là. Je suis Fernand Thibodeau. Puis quand vous parlez du trou noir, ben, on m'appelle le trou noir. Alors, je suis le porte-parole du nouveau comité ASTS, qui aide au soutien des travailleurs et travailleuses saisonniers. Comme vous savez, nous, dans la péninsule acadienne, les gens souffrent beaucoup présentement au niveau de la situation du trou noir. Puis, on a travaillé fort aussi avec le gouvernement, avec Serge qui est ici avec nous et Pat aussi. Puis, on a travaillé fort avec aussi les députés provinciaux aussi, parce que c'est très important pour nous de travailler ensemble, puis en collaboration ensemble pour pouvoir trouver la solution au problème. Parce que je dois dire, présentement, le problème n'est pas réglé. Puis, les gens sont encore en train de souffrir de cette situation-là. Puis, il fait beau de dire qu'il y a beaucoup de millions qui ont été investis pour pouvoir régler le problème de la situation du trou noir. Mais moi, je dois vous dire que présentement, ce que je trouve aussi qui est pas le fun pour les gens, c'est au niveau quand on parle des régions, au niveau, mettons, la région Restigouche-Albert. Puis si quand on regarde ça, ça fait presque 10 ans qu'il n'y a pas eu d'études de fait au niveau de ça. Je dois vous dire, je suis très informé, j'ai beaucoup de documentation sur ça aussi. Et je peux vous dire que j'ai rencontré aussi votre ministre Jean-Yves Duclos 2 fois. J'ai été au Forum de l'assurance-emploi à Ottawa. J'ai été chez vous aussi au foyer faire une conférence de presse où est-ce que j'aurais aimé ça vous voir. Puis c'est quelque chose que j'aimerais aussi. Mais comme vous savez, l'industrie saisonnière par chez nous souffre beaucoup aussi, puis on doit la protéger. Alors moi, je demande que l'industrie saisonnière soit protégée. Et je parle ici aujourd'hui pour le Nouveau-Brunswick, la Côte-Nord et Charlevoix, et toutes les régions où est-ce que les industries saisonnières sont là aussi, qui doivent être aussi revisées. Et je parle que j'aimerais vraiment que les régions comme Restigouche-Albert et toutes les autres régions soient revisées pour pouvoir voir comment on peut répondre à l'économie vraiment réelle de ces gens-là. Parce qu'on ne peut pas dire que l'économie est vraiment bonne au Nouveau-Brunswick, comme on le dit, puis on ne peut pas dire que ces régions-là, qui n'ont pas été étudiées, ça fait 10 ans, que reflètent vraiment l'économie. Et une autre chose qu'on vous demande, ça serait que les travailleurs saisonniers aient une région protégée. Ça, on vous demande ça. Puis ma question aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on a de la misère à vous rencontrer, mais j'aimerais vraiment ça, personnellement, pouvoir travailler avec vous. Puis j'aimerais aussi, en collaboration avec vous, pouvoir vous rencontrer et discuter vraiment de la situation pour qu'on puisse trouver vraiment un problème pour avoir une région protégée pour tous ces gens-là.
Merci d'être ici. Je suis très content que vous soyez venu pour partager ça directement avec moi. Et c'est à ça que ça sert. Des assemblées publiques comme ça, de pouvoir répondre directement à des questions de citoyens engagés comme vous. Évidemment, comme vous soulignez, on a une équipe extraordinaire qui travaille là-dessus. Notre ministre Jean-Yves Duclos, notre député Serge Cormier et d'autres députés à travers le Québec, à travers le Nouveau-Brunswick, à travers les provinces de l'Atlantique, sont vraiment engagés avec ce défi. Mais vous parliez de travailleurs saisonniers. Je pense que c'est pas tout à fait ça qu'il faut comprendre. C'est que c'est pas les travailleurs qui sont saisonniers, c'est le travail qui est saisonnier. Ce n'est pas des gens qui décident seulement de travailler un petit moment pendant l'année, c'est le travail lui-même qui est saisonnier. Parce qu'on a des saisons au Canada. Et l'hiver, on peut moins faire que l'été. Et de reconnaître cette réalité, c'est pour ça qu'on a un système d'assurance-emploi qui reflète ces défis des travailleurs saisonniers. Ce qu'on a pu faire, on a pu investir 240 millions de dollars dans le dernier budget, justement pour aider ces travailleurs-là, aider ces industries à pouvoir passer à travers ce moment de trou noir. Mais on sait qu'il y a encore beaucoup plus de travail à faire. On sait aussi qu'on a pu étendre de 5 semaines la durée des prestations d'assurance-emploi dans bien des régions, ce qui fait une différence aussi. Mais on reconnaît aussi, comme j'ai dit, qu'il y a plus de travail à faire, qu'on se doit de mieux comprendre les défis que les gens vivent en région et de voir comment on peut répondre à ce défi de travail saisonnier. Il y a toutes sortes de réflexions qu'on a faites. Quand on s'est fait élire, on avait promis de renverser les changements néfastes que M. Harper avait fait à notre système d'assurance-emploi. On a fait ça. Par la suite, on est en train de travailler pour éliminer le trou noir, mais on voit aussi que un des problèmes, c'est qu'on est dans une situation où il y a le taux de chômage au pays le plus bas depuis 40 ans. Donc, à travers le pays, il y a beaucoup plus de gens qui travaillent. Mais évidemment, comme on sait très bien, ce n'est pas répandu uniformément. Il y a des endroits où c'est la réalité toute contraire. Et donc, à cause de ça, que nous devons d'assurer et d'aider ces gens-là. Donc, je suis très content qu'on est en train de travailler avec vous. On va continuer de travailler avec vous. Je peux vous assurer que nos députés vont continuer à travailler pour répondre aux vrais défis que les familles dans la péninsule acadienne et ailleurs dans les régions où le travail est plus saisonnier puissent vraiment avoir toutes les opportunités d'avoir des avenirs positifs et des options pour leurs enfants et leurs petits-enfants. Merci pour votre question. Une autre question? Oui. Bien. Allô?
Well, first, thank you for being here. I'm a survivor from the LGBTQ military purge, and thank you so much for inviting me to Ottawa to witness your apology in 2017. I just have a question for you. Did your office contact the U.S. military or the U.S. government to voice our concern about what they're doing in the U.S. with our the transgendered military people, where they're banning and purging them? Because I lived with this for 30 years, and I can't imagine what they're going through right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your question. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. You know, that moment of the apology in the House was one of those things that I will look back on as one of those really important things that I got to do as Prime Minister. And actually one of the things, I don't know if you remember, but when I was little, when I was a kid, I was 13 when my father ended his terms as Prime Minister. So I don't have a lot of memories of things he did as Prime Minister, not in details. But I do remember one morning in April of 1982, it was a rainy day in Ottawa, where I went and sat on the lawn of Parliament Hill and watched my father and Queen Elizabeth sign Canada's Constitution into law. And that was a big thing that I was glad my dad brought me to Parliament Hill for. So the morning I was going to make the apology in the House to recognize that Canada had deliberately and systematically discriminated against, mistreated, disrespected, marginalized people who wanted nothing more than to serve Canada in the military or in the public service, and were made to feel excluded, or were actually actively excluded in terrible ways. To take responsibility for that was something I wanted to share with my kids, so I brought them to the House so they could see what responsible leadership is about, and what moving forward in a way that acknowledges the mistakes of the past is all about. So that was an important day for me, and it is, of course, with tremendous dismay that I see that for all the progress we've made in Canada, and we have made wonderful progress, there are still tremendous challenges with discrimination, particularly around trans people in Canada. But even in our military, we've made significant improvements, and I can't say it's easy, but trans people are welcomed in our military. But there are lots of places around the world where that's not the case. There are far too many countries that still systematically and deliberately criminalize homosexuality, and the example that Canada gives is a really, really important one. Obviously, the internal decisions of the American administration is something I try not to weigh in on overly directly. It's important to get along with our neighbor, and I try to do that in a way that also makes it unequivocal where our values are and what we stand for. And I think the best thing we can do is continue to advocate for what we're doing here in Canada, around the world, and support those amazing people and organizations around the world, in the States and elsewhere, that are doing great work to stamp out the continued discrimination based on who people love, and that is just wrong. Thank you. Another question. Geez, not a lot of women putting up their hands today, but okay, you, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Trudeau, sir, I went to visit you before you became Prime Minister. I went out of my way big time to come to see you. I'm not a card-carrying liberal, but I'm a liberalized kind of man, and a fellow who believes that a liberalized society is the best society. Good to see you here, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a constitutional question for you. Well, first I'd like to say that I held a title of National Chief for the Atlantic region. I sat around the constitutional table with Pierre Trudeau in 1983 and 1984, and I sincerely believe without him we would not have been able to write in treaty and Aboriginal rights. The sad story of it all is that when we got there, female persons, women, were not on the constitutional agenda. And I'm very proud, pleased to tell you, sir, that I helped put women there. Now, if you look at Canada's constitutional book under section 35.4, you will see that these rights are guaranteed equally to female persons. I'm proud of that. But my question to you, sir, pertains to a constitutional, it's a constitutional question, but it pertains to your Supreme Court of Canada. I suppose whatever I say has to be done in a form of a question, so I'll do my best to do that. Sir, did you know that the premiers of Canada, mostly conservative, British Columbia was social credit at the time, took Pierre Trudeau to court, questioning his authority to undo or change the British North America Act? So, two questions were on the table that time. Are treaties valid in the 1980s? And who has the authority to undo the British North America Act or change it in some way or in every way? So my question now, sir, is what took place on the 28th of September. Actually, the premiers took him to court on the 18th of April, 1981. On the 28th of September 1981, Chief Justice Boral Laskin made his presentation public, their findings, outlining the only criteria for changing constitutional laws in this country. Excuse me for pointing, sir, I have a bad habit, sorry about that. So the only criteria for changing constitutional laws in this country is when the Prime Minister of Canada, which at that time was Pierre Trudeau, your father, he said the only criteria for changing constitutional laws is when the Prime Minister calls a constitutional conference, invites the premiers, territories, Aboriginal peoples, the media, and it must be done in an open forum. Sir, I like the statement that you made in Ottawa. I was there on the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and I like what you said. Why do you have to go to court every time you contest your right or even mention your right? You got to end up in court. I like that, sir. Thank you very much. So, but now what I'm saying to you, in 1981, the Supreme Court of Canada, I'm going to try to form my question on this and then I'll sit down. Sir, there has not been one constitutional conference yet, and I kind of thought I heard you speaking publicly that you might have one in the year 2019. I haven't heard of one yet. But sir, I want to know what you will do to protect Section 35, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Stephen Harper has already done it using omnibus legislation. So sir, Section 25A and B is our charter. Sir, would you protect these constitutional laws in your next term? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your question, and for reminding us all of the complexity of what was involved in repatriating and moving forward with our own constitution. I have said on a number of issues that I am not interested in reopening the Constitution. I think Canadians remember some of the constitutional battles of the past decades, and the amending formula that has been put into the Constitution in order to change the Constitution requires at least the support of 7 provinces representing 50% of the population of the country, which is a very high bar to meet for changing the Constitution, as it should be. If you're going to change the Constitution of a country, you need to be able to show that there is a significant amount of support and justification to actually make those changes. So that is something that I recognize. There are people from time to time who like to point out, oh, we need to change the Constitution to change the Senate. We need to change the Constitution to do a better job with Indigenous rights. We need to change the Constitution to give Quebec more or different powers. These are not things that I am interested in. I think our Constitution is just fine. And I think our capacity to work within the frame set out of the Constitution is quite significant. We were able to reform the Senate to make it less partisan, to make it more independent, to be less about patronage. Indeed, the novelist David Richard from around here is now a senator, and he's the most independent of all independent senators. He's so independent he won't even sit as part of the independent senators group, which is, of course, right, and his choice to do, because we needed to improve the Senate, but I was the one who said we need to do it in ways that don't reopen the Constitution. One of the issues that also comes up around the Constitution is around Section 35 rights for Indigenous peoples. Now, Section 35 guarantees the rights of Indigenous peoples, and the problem is, over the past few decades, they have repeatedly had to go to court to say, look, as a country, you recognize that we have rights. Now you have to live up to those rights and give us a bigger say in what happens on our territories, better control over what happens with our people, better ability to teach our language, our traditions, our culture. And that idea that they would continually have to go to court to recognize what Canada's Constitution already says and lays out and guarantees is, one of those things, of many things, that is broken in the relationship that Canada has with Indigenous peoples. So we've actually shifted off that court battle approach towards a recognition of rights framework, where we say your rights are recognized within Section 35. You don't need to go to court to prove it. We acknowledge that your rights are there. Now let us figure out how we move forward together in partnership, in trust, in shared stewardship of this land, of its people, and of the future. And that is the approach that we are trying to take on reconciliation. There may come a time where we realize that we are using all the tools we have and our Constitution is limiting us as a country in some way, and we will have to change the Constitution. But that day is not today. Canada works remarkably well at holding us together, at creating opportunities and respecting rights of everyone. And because of that, I have no intention anytime to open up the Constitution, but I will consistently and always respect and defend both the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Constitution of Canada. Thank you very much, sir, for your question. Another question. You, ma'am. I try to be gender balanced in my approach, but there are not enough women asking questions. So I'll come to you afterwards.
I thank you for coming, and thank you, Pat, for hosting this. I came to say thank you, and that's what I'm here for. Your government did something for our little community, a little tiny community outside of Miramichi called St. Margaret's, and we got a water system. We got a water treatment plant refurbishment, a brand new distribution system. And this morning I got up and I had a bath. I had a bath in clean water, and I want to say thank you.
It's funny how we can take things for granted in Canada. Running water, clean water, electricity, a road system that works, laws that work. But they're all dependent on infrastructure. Are all dependent on making investments to maintain and upgrade and build for the future of our communities. And in the last election, as a country, as a party, we made a choice politically that was different from our two main opponents. We said what this country needs is investments in infrastructure, in climate resilient infrastructure, in community infrastructure, in housing, in transportation and transit infrastructure. The infrastructure deficit we have is far greater than any concerns about budgetary deficit, and that is the difference, and that is the choice we're going to make. So we made a commitment to Canadians that we were going to invest in the middle class with things like the Canada Child Benefit and the tax cut for the middle class, but also in our communities directly, including in things that aren't particularly sexy and exciting in terms of an investment. A new water treatment plant, yay! But boy, when you don't have it, you really notice. And those are the things that we've made a commitment to do. And that's why we are investing in infrastructure right across the country, in housing, in social infrastructure, in community infrastructure, in small towns and in big cities. Because our ability to invest right today, to create good jobs in construction and design and benefit our communities right now with the building process, and make sure that those communities are better off for the long term as well, is how you create success and opportunities for all Canadians. So you may hear from our opponents because, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't mention it, but it's an election year this year. You may hear from our opponents concerns about when are we going to balance the budget? What are we doing about deficits? And let me assure you that we are always focused on fiscal responsibility. We know that we do have to invest wisely in the future, and we do need to make sure we are not leaving undue debt loads for future generations. That's why what we're looking at as we invest in our communities, invest in our future, invest in Canadians, we're looking at the size of our debt as a proportion of the size of our entire economy. And you can be reassured that in terms of debt to GDP ratio, we're among the lowest of all our like-minded countries, and every year we're getting lower. Our debt as a size of our economy is decreasing every year, and that's because we're fiscally responsible. And if you don't want to take our word for it, you can look at the international credit rating agencies like S&P and Moody's that actually look at fiscal plans and look at what governments are doing and whether or not they're willing to lend money to those governments. And Canada has, for our fiscal plan, a AAA top-level rating in that countries, that these bond credit agencies think that we are being absolutely and totally responsible with our plan to grow the economy in ways that make sure that everyone does well. But that's how we got that water infrastructure in your community. Human.
I'm really pressed for time, and I need a picture with you. Would you mind?
Is that your only question, ma'am? Thank you very much, ma'am. That was an easy question. You, sir.
I'm one of the people who live in the retirement community here. And originally I'm from New York City. And I came up here when your dad was prime minister and our president was Nixon, which really seemed bad at that time.
Be nice.
But one of the things I felt in the years that I've been here, we're going to be married 46 years this year. And the health system we have is so good. I know people complain, but it is so good. I have brother and sister down there still, and they go into debt in order to get health. And I've had 2 knee replacements, we've had children, our son almost died once, he's fine. All because the Canadian government put that, Tommy Douglas put it there, and we lived in Saskatchewan for a while. My next question is, are we going to get pharmacare?
Very good question. No, thank you, sir, for that question. Yes, you know, we love to complain about certain aspects of our health system, but we are incredibly lucky that we have a country in which you don't go into debt, you don't go bankrupt when you fall ill or you have an accident happen to you. And that is something that you know, generations of Canadians saw. Tommy Douglas and it took a federal Liberal government to actually implement it across the country over the resistances of a number of provinces. But it made a huge difference in our sense of fairness as a country, knowing that we need to be there for each other. I think there's something about Canadians where we understand that. In fact, on nights like this, it really emphasizes that you have to be there for your neighbors when you have winters and communities as spread out as our country are. So as they are in our country. So yes, we look at being there for each other. Pharmacare is something that we have talked about as a country for a long time. The costs of prescription drug medications is a significant burden for a large number of Canadians. And that is something that we have certainly recognized is something we have to move forward on. There have been a lot of works, a lot of studies, a lot of different programs that have been put in place by different provinces, by different insurers, by different organizations. We have tasked former Ontario Health Minister Dr. Eric Hoskins to oversee an expert panel that is right now in the process of looking into the situation on pharmacare, what is needed, what different models we could look forward. They're going to come back with a report probably by this spring, and I can guarantee you it will be something that we will talk about an awful lot, most likely in the coming election, but moving forward on pharmacare is certainly something that I've heard loudly and clearly from Canadians is that next step and that priority. Thank you, sir. Question there. You in the back, ma'am. Ma'am. Yeah. Right. No, sorry, behind you. In the...
Hi, my name is Tina Young. Hey, Tully.
Hi, Tina.
I'm from Red Bank. We drove like 30 miles in this crazy weather.
Thank you for your dedication to democracy.
Yay. It's not a question. It's more of just a thank you for you and your government for legalizing the medical marijuana recreational use. And because of our aging population, because I'm getting older too, we have more options of like exploring alternative medicines for pain and inflammation, those types of things. And like for me personally, I don't smoke marijuana, but I've experimented with different types of use for CBD and THC and those kinds of things. And I feel good doing it. I don't feel like a criminal. And I remember back in the day when I was younger, my friends that smoked marijuana, they'd be like, oh yeah, this is gonna be some day where, you know, they should legalize marijuana, you know? and it's actually happened. And that's what I'll remember, because I think it's really great. And because of the aging population, like I said, we can now explore other alternatives for pain and other disorders, things like that. You know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comment. I think it's important to sort of make it fairly clear. And I understand, you know, the opportunities for better investigation of you know, pain relief properties and various things. That's not why we move forward on the legalization of marijuana. We move forward on the legalization of marijuana faced with a total failure of public policy that was in place. The goal of the prohibition on marijuana was to make it more difficult for people to access an illegal drug. Particularly, make it more difficult for young people to access it, because we know that the impact on the developing brain of drugs of any type is significantly more negative. And unfortunately, Canada had, over the past years, the highest rate in the developed world of underage use of marijuana. So our current system wasn't working to protect our kids. And I was in a university a few days ago doing a town hall like this, filled with young people, and I asked them, you know, how many of them as university students can think back to when they were, you know, 14, 15, or 16 years old, and could they put up their hand if back then it would be easier for them to buy a joint than it would be to buy a bottle of beer? And a few hundred kids put up their hands, because the prohibition actually made it easier for young people to access it, because, you know, if you want to buy marijuana off of a pusher, off of someone who's in the illegal trade, they're not going to check your ID. And if you at least treat it like alcohol and sell it at a controlled point of sale, then you will have to show ID to be able to purchase cannabis. Now, on top of that, the product that's out there is now going to be certified by Health Canada as not being laced with fentanyl or pesticides or chemicals or other things that can be particularly dangerous. So if people are going to choose to use marijuana, they are going to be able to do so in a way that is safer, more controlled, and quite frankly doesn't flow billions of dollars into the pockets of organized crime every year as the existing system, the previous system did. So there will be benefits and offshoots from the legalization in terms of better studies, better understanding, better choices. But fundamentally, the reason we moved forward is because the system that we had in place did not do enough to protect our kids and did not protect our communities from organized crime, and that's where controlling it and regulating it as a product was a better way to keep our communities safe. So thank you very much for your question. You, ma'am. Yeah, no, we're going to go to her next.
Thank you very much. I have a follow-up question to my friend Ken's question about healthcare. And I would like you to give me some indication as to when Health Canada will recognize chronic Lyme disease. There has been tremendous chatter about it. It's very gratifying to hear local news stations, etc., talk about Lyme disease. But there are thousands of Canadians suffering with, living with, and dying from Lyme disease. I, for one, have to spend thousands of dollars per year traveling to the United States to get treatment. And I'm very fortunate and grateful that I can do that, but I know many people who can't, and it's profoundly disappointing how long it's taking Health Canada to recognize Lyme disease. Can you comment on that?
Thank you very much. I know there's been a number of people in our government, but also in the House of Commons, Elizabeth May most specifically, who's been an extraordinary advocate for doing more on the fight against Lyme disease. This is a challenge, a disease that is increasing in prevalence in leaps and bounds, unfortunately, over the past years. And is underdiagnosed and, quite frankly, understood in Canada. I have spoken recently with one of your great New Brunswick ministers, Minister Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, our health minister from right near here in Dieppe, who is engaged with this issue, but I will certainly impress upon her once again the concerns that you have and how we need to make sure that we're doing more to help Canadians who are struggling with this and afflicted by this, and prevent people from going undiagnosed for too long as well. Thank you for your question. Yes, you, young lady.
My name is Yamawa. I came all up from Syria, and I came here to thank you.
Thank you for your kind words, but I have to highlight that, yes, it was our government that moved very quickly at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, to bring in 40,000 Syrian refugees who were just looking to build a better life for themselves and their families than they could back in their home regions. But it wasn't really something that the government could just do and decide to do and make a success like this. It took Canadians, church groups, community groups, families, neighborhoods coming together and opening their hearts and their homes and saying, we want to welcome in a family to our community, and we want to support them in their next steps in life. And that was something that we saw right across the country. It actually became one of the stories of the 2015 election campaign. That we would be open and we would do more as a country to welcome in people who were fleeing violence, persecution, and terror on the other side of the world. And it was an example of how Canadians understand that welcoming people who are trying to build a better life is what has created this country. The very first settlers were seeking better lives for themselves came and were welcomed by the people who'd lived here for millennia. And successive waves of people came from different parts of the world to build better futures for themselves and their lives. And it worked. Canada is one of the most extraordinary countries in the world, one of the most successful countries in the world, because of the depth of our diversity. Because we open ourselves to people who bring other experiences, other stories, and want nothing more than to contribute to their community and build better opportunities, and build opportunities to work hard and build a better life for their kids. That is the story of this country. And right now, it's one of those great advantages we have in this world, a world that is increasingly fearful in some ways, increasingly insular in some ways, closed off and trying to close out the outside world because of anxiety. And it's normal that people feel anxious. We're at a time of tremendous change. The global economy is evolving, globalization is bringing in all sorts of different pressures. But when we're faced with anxieties, it's very easy to have those fears drummed up and exacerbated and get people to point fingers and lay blame and try and exclude and say me first, instead of looking to build in an open way that is actually growing our society. But Canadians get that we do better when we welcome in people who are wanting to build a better future. And that is one of the things that yet again, we're going to be talking about in this upcoming election, because there are people trying to create fears around the country, around immigration. And we have to be true to ourselves as a country and know that, yes, we can't not be careful. We have to be thoughtful about making sure that we're putting safety and security of Canadians and our communities at the front row, and making sure that we're being thoughtful about this. But the kind of fear-mongering, the kind of intolerance, the kind of misinformation that unfortunately is going on across the country and around the world is something that all of us have a responsibility to engage with in a positive and thoughtful way. And that's why I'm so looking forward to having a big conversation with Canadians over this coming year about how we're going to continue to grow our communities, grow our economy, and give more chances for people to contribute, to succeed, to continue to build this country. Because like you and your family, our country is better that you are now here with all of us. Thank you very much for being here. Another question? Yes, here in the back row.
Good evening. I have a question about the recent pilot project for prison needle exchange. I don't know if you're aware, but you're about 45 minutes away from the Atlantic Institution right now. So this is an issue that hits pretty close to home for a lot of people who live in the Miramichi region. And while I recognize, and I know most people know, that the rates of infectious diseases within our prison system are much higher than in the regular population, my question is, why was a policy implemented that facilitates illegal drug activity in prisons and puts the lives of our correctional officers at risk every day inside those walls?
No, and so you're asking, why did we bring in a needle exchange program? That's a great question. It's the kind of thing that a lot of people wonder about. If we want to ensure that people are not using drugs, wouldn't it be smarter to ban or prohibit needles within our correctional facility? Perhaps. Let's look at the evidence. Let's ask experts who've done studies. What is the best way to keep our citizens safe, the people who work in those communities safe, the people who are incarcerated safer? Because most of those people who are incarcerated will be, at one point, released back into society, into communities, and we don't necessarily want them to have communicable diseases that were exacerbated while in their time in incarceration. Needle exchange programs have always been somewhat controversial, not just in situations of incarceration, but in communities. When we talk about programs like Insight in Vancouver, where people can actually come and have a safe place to inject illegal drugs into them, there's always a lot of resistance to that idea. Well, shouldn't we just, prevent them from doing that at all? The problem is you can't. If someone's an addict, they are going to do everything they can to try and get that next fix. And what has been clearly understood is if they can't get a clean needle, they will use a dirty needle. They will share needles. And even in a prison, where you're trying to control what is there and what exists, there is always going to be contraband. There is always going to be people bringing in illicit products. So the question is, given the fact of it, do you want to try and ban and prohibit, or do you want to try and manage it as a way of reducing the risk to public health, as a way of harm reduction? And that, based on science and data, is the best way to ensure safety, not just for that, the community of inmates, but indeed for society as a whole. Preventing the spread of communicable diseases through dirty needles is something that we have the power to do. And it doesn't mean providing needles to people who don't have some. It's a needle exchange program. So you get a clean needle in exchange for a dirty needle. Yes, it would be much better if people weren't addicted to a broad range of substances that are obviously bad for them. And we need to do a lot more work fighting addiction. But in general, criminalizing addiction, further marginalizing people who are vulnerable and addicted, including in incarcerated populations, is not something that actually makes them or our communities safer. So we believe as a government in evidence-based policy. We believe in using science and data and facts to try and make things better. And that's why, based on science, based on evidence, we know that a needle exchange program within our correctional facilities is something that keeps them and all of us safer through science. Thank you for your question. And the last question of the night, from you.
Premièrement, bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Je vais parler en français. Et j'ai pensé beaucoup avant de vous demander cette question. J'ai pensé en fait d'écrire sur une page. J'étais assise ici depuis 5 heures et je pense à ma question. Mais en fait, moi ce soir, je vais faire ça court et je vais parler d'une expérience personnelle. Je vais parler à propos de l'immigration et mon question va porter sur ce sujet. J'ai déménagé au Canada en 2009-2010, directement du Liban à Chidiac. Et ce n'était pas facile du tout. Je peux vous dire qu'il y a une très grande différence entre être accepté et ne pas être accepté. J'ai passé à peu près 5 à 6 ans d'être capable, ça m'a pris 6 ans d'être capable de sortir et de dire je suis chez nous. Ça c'est chez nous. J'étais victime d'intimidation à l'école. Ça m'a évité de faire... Ça ralentit mon futur. Ça m'a pris plus longtemps à rentrer à l'université, de finir mon parcours là-bas. Ma question à vous ce soir, c'est comment on peut travailler ensemble pour rendre la communauté canadienne, la société canadienne plus ouverte à accepter des nouveaux arrivants. Des gens comme moi, par exemple. Des gens que j'ai souffert pendant 5 ans, je peux dire. Je peux vous dire, sans amis, sans vie sociale du tout. Je suis prête à partager mon expérience avec vous, avec des gens qui veulent aider pour rendre cette expérience meilleure pour des gens qui veulent venir au Canada. Donc, pour vous autres, quelles sont des stratégies que vous aimeriez adopter pour rendre cette expérience meilleure pour d'autres? Parce que moi, je ne veux pas voir d'autres gens passer à travers ce que moi j'ai passé.
Merci beaucoup pour la question. Merci pour ton courage. D'abord, oui. OK. On va prendre une photo à la fin. D'abord, je veux te féliciter pour ton courage. C'est pas facile de quitter son pays pour traverser un océan et commencer une nouvelle vie. C'est même très, très difficile et ça prend des gens assez courageux. Et je pense que c'est une des raisons pour laquelle le Canada a été tellement chanceux avec les gens qu'on a accueillis ici depuis des générations. C'est des gens qui ont choisi de prendre un grand risque et de miser sur eux-mêmes et dire, même si je me rends dans un pays lointain où je n'ai pas ce cercle d'amis ou de famille ou d'appui, je pense que je vais pouvoir bâtir une vie meilleure pour moi-même et pour mon éventuelle famille que ce que j'aurais pu faire si je suis resté chez moi. Alors déjà, on voit que les genres de personnes qui choisissent d'émigrer dans un nouveau pays, déjà, c'est des gens courageux qui vont être assez extraordinaires. Et c'est ce qu'on a vu. Les vagues d'immigration de gens qui fuyaient leur pays au cours des guerres mondiales, au cours des différents fléaux et défis à travers le monde pour venir au Canada, pour venir ailleurs, ont contribué énormément à bâtir ce pays. Mais ça n'a jamais été facile. Ça n'a jamais été facile de s'intégrer dans ce nouveau pays. Et une des raisons pour laquelle le Canada a été plus réussi que d'autres pays par rapport à l'immigration, c'est qu'on a fait des efforts, surtout depuis les dernières décennies, d'aider à l'intégration. Des organismes communautaires qui visent l'intégration, la réussite et l'appui pour des nouveaux arrivants. Des programmes d'apprentissage de langue, de reconnaissance de diplômes et de capacités, de qualifications. On a fait beaucoup de progrès là-dedans, mais il y a encore beaucoup à faire. Alors, je veux vraiment d'abord te remercier pour ton courage, pour ta ténacité, d'être rendu à un endroit où tu peux te dire chez toi. Mais on doit aussi comprendre que souvent, un déplacement, un dépaysagement comme ça prend vraiment une génération. Que la première génération arrivée a encore beaucoup de souvenirs de l'ancien pays, de comment ça fonctionnait, et c'est les enfants qui grandissent au Canada qui arrivent à jumeler ces identités, à être fiers de leur origine, de leur identité, mais aussi apprendre à aimer la culture, la vie, la communauté ici. Et nous, en tant que société, nous devons de mieux appuyer les gens dans la façon qu'ils arrivent et qu'ils cherchent à contribuer au Canada. On est en train d'investir encore plus dans des programmes d'intègrement et des programmes pour appuyer les nouveaux arrivants. Mais ultimement, ça doit être les Canadiens eux-mêmes qui sont ouverts envers les voisins, qui savent que des gens qui arrivent ici pour bâtir un monde meilleur vont aussi bâtir un monde meilleur pour la communauté dans laquelle ils se trouvent, pour leur communauté d'accueil. Ça a été l'histoire du Canada et ça va continuer d'être l'avenir du Canada si nous continuons de croire en nous-mêmes et de choisir l'ouverture plutôt que la peur. Et sur ça, mes amis, je veux vous remercier d'être sortis ce soir. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It was an extraordinary pleasure to spend a little moment in pure democracy with all of you. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for everything you did tonight. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very much.